Once upon a time, long, long ago, so long ago that no one's quite sure if it really happened or not. In the mountains of Borneo, there was a village where things happened like they always happened, and people expected that they would continue to happen. And there was a boy, and there was a girl, and there was another boy. And this boy would pester the girl, and the girl wasn't sure that she liked being pestered by him, but she didn't quite know. And then there was the other boy, who was telling her that she should marry him, and he was big and strong, and she thought she'd better marry him because otherwise she wasn't sure what the other boy would do, and that this would protect her if she needed protection. He was a bit of an angry man, but a strong man, and someone who would, she thought, make a good husband, where she wasn't sure about the other one. And they married, and the other one would still sometimes pester her. And one day, when she went out into her garden, the other one came to her. This is what they have their gardens out in the forest. That's where they grow their food. And he came to her, and there was no one around. And he said that he wanted her, and she was a bit nervous and told him to go away. And he said, "I'm better than your husband in every way. I am stronger, more handsome." And in those days, people didn't wear very much or anything at all. And he waved his ding-dongle-dingle around and said, "I'm bigger than your husband, too." She might have been interested, or she might not. I think she might not have been. And she rubbed her tummy, and she showed him it was growing, and she said she was with child, and he should leave her alone. And he was furious. And he kicked her hard in her belly and ran away, and she miscarried. She was very sad. She was upset in every way. She didn't like to tell her husband how it had happened. She was worried somehow. Both men were so strong. She didn't want them to fight. She didn't know which would win. I mean, if her husband won, that would be all right. But supposing he was badly injured, then he wouldn't be a very good husband. And then if he died, she'd have to take him. So she left it as it was. But then she couldn't seem to come in the family way again. However hard they tried, they did. So she went to see the woman, the old woman who helped the younger women, who helped in other ways too. We might call her a wise woman, or a magician, or a witch, or a witch doctor, or a shaman. But she was the woman who lived in the village and helped people. And in a world where all was governed by spirits and one's relationship with spirits, she was the intermediary. As always, she made the lady wee in a pot. Medicine hasn't changed. She looked at it, she smelt it, and then she looked deep into it. And then she looked at the lady. Then she cast her stones, she burnt her herbs, and she killed a cockerel and examined its insides. She shook her head. "I see no more babies from you, but do not despair. There are always people dying around here and leaving children, or people who have too many children and can't feed them. Adopt a child. Adopt many children. They will probably love you more and be better children and more grateful than if they were your own. She was not. She tried, and maybe it was because of time of peace, but there were no babies. They could find no babies, and her husband was a bit cross, and she was sad. And the other man would sometimes come whispering, and he'd tell her that she should go and see the strange man, the magician who lived in a cave high up in the hills. No one went to see him, for he was rumored to be bad, to be mean, to talk to spirits, but not in a good way and not to help. But he said this wasn't true, that this man was powerful and kind and good. He just liked to be alone and she should go and see him. He thought that this was a bit of a trick or a trap, for it was a long way to go and a lonely way to go, and her husband wouldn't go with her. Her husband would have nothing to do. No one would have anything to do with this man. And yet this other one would know she was going and would know that she was far from the village and he could do what he liked for her. But he was very persuasive. So she waited until a time came when she knew her husband would be gone, and she knew that this man would be gone for several days on a hunting trip. And she crept up through the jungle, up the stream, to the crag, to the mountain, and to the cave. He wheezed. Oh, what a baby! You want a baby? You must be very, very careful what you wish for. I don't think you don't want a baby. No, you don't want a baby. You do want a baby, but be careful. I don't think you want the baby. You do want the baby. Be very, very careful. He made her pee in a pot, and he looked at the pee. You could have a baby, but you don't want a baby. You don't want this baby. You could have one, but be very careful. I don't think you want this baby. I don't think you do. No. Be very careful. Be very, 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 very careful. She wanted a baby. Well, come back to me with 3 live cockerels, and I'll put something inside you and you'll have a baby. I'll put something inside you, but I don't think it's a good idea. Don't blame me, but I'll do it. But don't blame me. It was a while before she had the cockerels, and the 2 men she feared were gone. And she went on the journey up to the cave with the 3 cockerels. Oh, I don't, but you wanted it. And he took the cockerel. Thank you. This was the moment when she wondered if she'd been had, for she noticed that he had an enormous erection. But she'd come there and she'd brought the cockerels, and what else was she to do? And maybe work, and it wouldn't take a minute, would it? Hardly take a minute. You down at all? Yeah. She wasn't even sure if that was the right hole. But there again, her husband told her you had to try every hole. And it was much bigger than her husband's. It was rather painful. And she turned and she looked. And when she turned and looked, she was sure that it wasn't the old man at all, but it was the young man who was always after her. His face was just like it, but as she turned and looked, it sort of transformed and changed into the old man's face. So she thought she must have imagined it. And she grinned and bared it for longer than she thought she could have grinned anything, and bared it. And then she went on her way, all the time feeling that she wasn't at all sure that she'd given the man 3 cockerels and given him a good time, and he was probably just as bad and silly and evil as everyone had said. And she thought she could only blame herself for going there, and only blame herself for listening to the stupid advice of the nasty man. But maybe, she thought, maybe it'll work. But when after a few months, and after a year, and after 2 years, it didn't work, she thought she had been had. Then one day she was out walking for a long way to gather fruit with her husband in the forest, when they heard her crying, and looking down, they saw a baby, a beautiful baby, a lovely baby, stretching out its arms to them. Well, they looked around. They didn't want to pick up someone else's baby, but they couldn't see anyone. They shouted as loud as they could, and no one came. Perhaps this is the baby we've been looking for all our life, she said. Perhaps it is, he said, or perhaps it's a spirit child, or perhaps it's someone's baby. But we can't leave it here. No. Take it. We will take it back to the village. And then we will let the elders look on it and tell us if it is a real baby, a spirit baby, or if it's anybody's baby. And if it's nobody's baby, but a real baby, it can be our baby. Our baby. So she took it and picked it up. But it was an awkward thing. And it wriggled and it moved in her arms. Hurry up, she shouted impatiently, but it still wriggled. And then said it clawing at my breast, she said. Shall I let it suckle, which you won't have any milk? But it's a magic baby. Maybe I've never had. Maybe I will be able to feed it, she said. Well, maybe she could. So she lashed it onto her nipple. Excruciating pain as it bit, but she didn't want to cry out too loudly for fear of scaring her husband, who was watching after them. It must always be like that. When the milk stops, we have to suffer, women. And they looked at the baby, and it looked so content. It was suckling away on her breast. And they smiled, the smile and the joy of new parents, or parents who might be new parents. No, we must hurry, he said. But of course, it's hard to hurry when you're suckling and you're walking through the forest, and it's getting dark, and he was more impatient, and he wasn't really looking at her. And then she stumbled and fell, and she got up, and he looked at her. She didn't look very well. And then she fell again, and he looked at her properly this time, and he saw that there was very little left of her. She was all skin and bones. But the baby was enormous. And he realized it was sucking all the blood from her. And he tried to get the baby off, but the baby wouldn't let go. And he tried, and he tried to open its mouth, but it wouldn't. So finally, in fury, he yanked the baby. And the baby came off, but it took the whole breast in its mouth, and a gaping wound was left in his white head. In a fury, he took his machete and he chopped the baby in half. There wasn't any blood, but out of both halves of the baby, sliver and crawl, his strange black, thin worm-like creatures would leap out and go forward and leap out and go forwards and started to slide off in either way. And he smashed one and it burst out with blood. And he smashed another one and it burst out with blood. And he tried to smash them all, but some of them managed to creep up, go under the litter. Some went up into the bushes and some went into the stream. And that is how leeches entered our world. I hope you're all in bed. I hope you're feeling sleepy.